Justin Paul. And Kpop Demon Hunters, that's why we're here. That's the only reason.
We're obsessed. I love this movie, and we're just so excited. We are going to introduce so many wonderful people who created Kpop Demon Hunters. Are you guys ready?
First, can we please meet the director of this film, one of the co-directors of this film, Chris Appelhans. We have Songwriter and the voice of Baby Saja, Black Label's Danny Chung.
The singing voice of Huntrix Mura, Audrey Nuna.
The singing voice of Huntrix Nuna Rei Ami. Songwriter and our buddy,
Mark Sonnenblick. Oh wait, I want to do this
Yeah,
one.
look at this.
Songwriter and voice of Huntrix Rumi, EJAE.
And last but not least, executive music producer and our friend Ian Eisendrath. Can we have a huge round of applause for this not one, not two, but 3-time Golden Globe nominated. Very exciting.
There's gonna crash. All right, so we're gonna start off with you, Chris. Tell us how you became involved in Kpop Demon Hunters and why. The thing that we really want to know is for people who write musicals, why is this a musical? How did it become a musical?
Oh, great question. I started on it 6 years ago, about 8 or 10 months after Maggie Kang created the concept in Korea, receiving a medal from the president of Korea. So we were friends from the industry, and I was looking at what I was going to do next, and I heard about this concept, and I loved it. We sat down over lunch, and she told me about her vision of sort of these K-pop stars and Demon Hunters, and the idea of these female characters that would be like really badass and also really stupid in the best way, silly and funny and angry and thirsty. Right? Yeah. We can talk about pop Korean men later if we want. Yeah. So, and I love my wife is Korean of almost 20 years, and she's one of those people. And so I love that, and I sort of pitched to Maggie that we could make a film, which was inherent to the concept about the power of music, the way that it connects people. If you're doing K-pop, fighting demons, what does music have to do with making the world less dark? The answer is obvious. It's this beautiful thing that creates community and empathy, and she's an OG K-pop fan from like the Soteji, like the 80s, and she loves music, so she immediately glommed onto that and loved that, and that was sort of that initial 1-2 punch of these amazing women whose music is supernatural. And then it kind of started to develop from there.
Did you always imagine it as having as many songs in it as it does, or did that develop over time?
Yeah, interesting, like the place of, I'm so excited to talk this nerdy stuff.
This is the night for it, yes?
Yeah. So oh my god, musical people. All right, this is great. So the
coolest of cool.
you guys will know, you know how hard this stuff is, and you know the nitty gritty. So the placement of the songs within the plot was almost there from the start. I think we just got lucky in the nature of the plot and the sort of introduction of the demon boy band and the fact that once we embraced sort of this mythology of the whole moon as a protective shield, that meant that the songs were truly material to the plot. Good song means fans love you more, means stronger whole moon. You lose that battle of the fans and the world starts to fall apart. And so it just meant that every time we needed a coherent moment of conflict in the story, that the song was sort of naturally occurring. And so they were there really, as you see them from the start. Our understanding of what purpose those songs served beyond sort of superficial conflict was not there. That took 5.5 years, I think, to get all of the songs to really understand what they were doing on a story level outside of the sort of pop construct.
And obviously you needed incredible songwriters to help make that happen. Enter folks like EJAE. Can you talk to us about how you got involved in the project, what the evolution of that was, both as a songwriter and then also how and when you became the singing voice of Rumi? Was that always part of the plan? Did that become the plan? When did you realize? Was it other people? Like, how did that all happen?
Well, definitely being a singing voice of Rumi was not planned at all.
Amazing.
Yeah, I got on like back in 2020. Oh, it's all a blur.
2020.
Right? Yeah. And yeah, I got on, and it was just. It was, I think the first thing, it was such a small team back then. It was just Chris, Maggie, the producer, and me, and, writer Daniel Cornhouse was actually how I got on the project. And, it was just a 5 of us, and I remember the first project that you guys gave me was, I thought it was the playing scene. I think it was the How It's Done song.
Yeah.
And then it was the mantra after that.
Yeah.
But that was the first one. It's a lot of pressure, but I was writing a lot of girl crush songs back then, so with K-pop idols, so it was really fun to experiment with my voice, and I think it had to be iconic and just like girls like slaying it and killing it. So that was the first project, and I think that's how it started. I think it was good feedback.
Well, no,
Tell me, Chris.
we had a beautiful pitch to the studio. We had beautiful artwork and our whole story structure and character arcs. But fundamental to that pitch was like, there's these women who have like supernatural gifts of song, and their voice can stir your soul.
No pressure.
Yeah,
no
so
pressure.
we did our big pitch after. So EJ wrote 2 demos, and we're like, well, shit, we just found a hunter. So we did this whole pitch, and then they were like, okay, this sounds really cool. But man, it's a bit of a reach with the music. We're like, here. And then we played the demos. And everyone listened, and then they're like, cool, green light, let's do this. I should have told you that earlier.
You needed you to keep working for 5 years.
But yeah, and then the part of the singing for Rumi, because I've been singing all the demos, so to me, I thought it was like you guys got really used to my voice, so it's just like demo-itis kind of situation. But yeah, and then you guys were just like really kind enough to be like, hey, so do you want to sing for Rumi? At first, I was like kind of hesitant, I'm not gonna lie. I was like, let me think about it, and because I'm just so used to being behind the scenes and just writing. But and then I was like, it's animation. I won't have to sing it live, But here I am.
So I want to talk specifically about the nominated song, Golden. And that's, song is how it functions within the story, because you are doing something that is purely like a fantastic earworm, amazing pop song that also works diegetically, as it's to nerd out a little bit. Diegetic means like that the audience is really actually they're actually hearing it as a song, but it's also doing a lot of theatrical work of moving the story forward. So I'm
Telling the story to these characters.
You guys learned that too.
But it's really hard and it's really hard to make it matter and have it push the story forward. So I would love for you and Mark to talk about the creation from a music and lyric standpoint, and how you guys worked with the team to come up with Golden, how it functioned within the plot, how you guys worked on it. And I'm personally curious, like, was it ever like, oh, this is too theatrical?
Yeah, the
or this
balance
is too
of
K-pop,
pop, theater,
or
storytelling.
how do you balance it?
Drafts.
Coming from two
We just want to learn.
I mean, this is also Ian and Chris and Maggie so deeply, and Michelle so deeply involved with this, because especially the structural and like balance between the two, I feel like, because there were 6 other versions of Golden, like other full songs in the Golden slot.
Do you have anything you want to reveal right now? Like, that didn't make that?
Well, you can't just sing all the demos. You want to just post them out right now?
I definitely, I
But they were amazing. They were amazing songs too. It figuring out part of what is amazing about writing in theater and film as well is you're writing on the story, and the story is changing. And I feel like part of what it was the vision for it would come from Ian and from the directors of like, this is what we think the song is. This is what we think the song is. And by the time we got to this version of Golden, I remember maybe there was like, we had a couple of sessions where we were talking about, okay, still in the homeland, there has to be this impossible high note that no human person could ever possibly sing live.
All the demos were so hard. But Golden was the hardest.
Yeah, we had to do this, but truly, I was like, okay, good, like, you're never gonna have to do this if the thing's gonna get great.
Can I sing Ian's praises for a minute?
Yes.
Because I think it's inherent to your question, which is the song does like 5 different things. And I'd love to think we were smart enough to like plan it from the start. But really it became a case of, within the first act of the movie, there was stuff that was really critical to emotionally bind in on these 3 women that wasn't in there. We knew it, but it wasn't in the movie. And Ian was like, well, you need I want song. We're like, no, don't. It's not. And he's like, yes, you do. And we ignored it for like a year. And then we were like, oh shit, nobody understands who these girls are and what their dream is. So the song is, it's exposition, a little bit of an origin story. It's a plot point, like it keeps them active. It's also a statement of their dream, it's their I want. But it's also a flawed statement, like they're seeking perfection, they're seeking a version of themselves with no fear and something that they're actually not capable of. And it's the vessel for Ruby's secret to be kind of juxtaposed. In the middle of all of that, all stuff that we had to do in the first act that we were doing independently, and Ian continued. The joke we have is that Maggie and I would go to story meetings, and we'd be like, oh, this is too hard, man. Oh, thank God we can go to the music meeting now. And we go to the music meeting, Ian would be like, all right, what's the one? I'm like, no. The music meeting turned into a story meeting. It's supposed to be fun. But he forced us to produce these. It's literally like for Golden, it's like a 6-page document that goes verse by verse, pre, chorus.
Yeah.
Literally like the most pedantic and literal and intense version of what the story is.
So Ian, how did you become involved in Kpop Demon Hunters? And what was your process in working with the songwriters to do this, and also
How'd you know?
with the director?
Yeah, well, so I was doing this show called Lila Crocodile. It was written by 2 people here named Danny and Justin. And we were in the middle of that. It ended, I didn't know what was next, and Spring Aspers, who's president of Sony Pictures Music, called and said, there's this thing you're gonna wanna do. And she's like, it doesn't make sense. But just trust me, it's gonna be amazing. The animation looks amazing, the directors are amazing. We're gonna get amazing songwriters. and all she said was like, it's a K-pop thing about Demon Hunters. And I would be like, okay, because I'm obviously the person who hired for a K-pop project. And but I met with Chris and Maggie and saw the storyboards. I loved the story. I just like, when they talked about this idea of these characters that live in a black and white world and then realize that it's the whole rainbow, and the good, the bad, the ugly, all those colors that make you who you are, and that only when you find your authentic self can you truly change the world. I was just like so moved by that, and then I heard these very preliminary demos that EJAE and Danny had done, and I had always liked K-pop music, and I always thought, oh, this is really theatrical and crazy, and wouldn't it be fun to go see a show or a movie or something that uses this music? And so that's how I got involved. And then what was your other question? Like,
I mean, how do you, if you brought the team members together, sort of how did you go about doing that?
I mean,
What-
okay, so before I came on board,
I mean, he's the only reason I'm on stage.
yeah, Mark, I brought Mark on board. No, so, which is one of the reasons, but
then also,
so EJ was here, and Chris and Maggie and Michelle, and then the other thing that Spring had done is form this incredible relationship with the Black Label, of which Danny is a critical part. And from there, we didn't know what else was going to happen. We didn't know how we were all going to work together. And we ended up tapping a few other writers, a guy named Lindgren, who's had many K-pop hits, Jenna Andrews, Stephen Kirk. So there's this whole stable, and then some writers whose songs didn't end up in the film, but like a whole stable of really talented writers. And it was sort of like casting musical or film, because it was all about, okay, we knew we had these song spots, we didn't know who was going to write them, and we started first with like Black Label writing the whole song by themselves, which was Soda Pop, which was really, really fun. But then we got to the girls' intro song, and Chris and Maggie, you know, had understandably, as we had fallen in love with this sound that EJ had created, but we were really obsessed with what Black Label could do, and it was like, oh, what if we do some crazy mashup of EJ and Black Label, and then you're like, oh, but we also really want to make sure there's lyrics that are like really on character, on story, so find someone to partner with EJ, and it's like, well, what if we pull in Mark? And that's how the whole process went. And even like, some people started songs that they didn't finish, and it was just sort of like continuing to find who would fit what the best, and you know, it was like, take some music production elements from one producer-songwriter from somebody else. Like, it was truly just like this patchwork quilt that didn't stop evolving until the final dub.
Look how carefully they're listening.
And we want your soul. Yeah, we're just Dan, I keep talking about you, by the way. Please chime in.
What I want to ask is, like, what was your involvement in? I mean, we know Ian very well because we've worked on a lot of projects with him.
He can be a lot, you know.
But I wanted to ask, like, Ian and Mark both come from more theater world, and I feel like, you know, EJ is more like are you pen and paper and pop and, you know, like top line and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you're coming from Black Label, which is more
Track work and stuff. I mean, you do everything, I guess.
Yeah, I came from the songwriting side as well, and then I think the music itself, as well as being theatrical and narrative driven, it had to be K-pop. It's the first word in the title. So it had to be genuinely and authentically K-pop, and there needed to be, you know, literally Korean producers and you know, songmakers and magicians in those rooms, and in the conversation of making this music. So we had to have an element of, and I think it was both of us throwing our hats in the ring and willing to fight for it, because I think the theater music side, you know, Ian and all this direction, we needed that, and then we needed that to be unwavering. And we needed the K-pop side to also be unwavering so that it could be both. And that's what it ended up being.
Is there an example when Justin and I we get into fights a lot when we're writing, and we say instead of meeting in the middle, we try to push each other forward? Is there an example that you guys can bring up, not of like a contentious actual fight that someone read about, but something where you guys were like, I'm fighting for this, and you met in a better place as a result of that?
I think every song. Because honestly, I can admittedly say the Black Label. I mean, we were used to making K-pop, and I think we were, for lack of a better term, brash enough to think it would just be another day in the studio making music, right? Because we weren't used to theater or cinema in that sense. We were maybe OST, but that's a completely different thing as well. This is actually has to be narrative driven and story driven and push the story forward and include story arc and character development and things like that. And I credit Ian a lot for that, for including those elements and not being shy about telling us that it needed to be there and it wasn't going to be another day of the studio. That those elements had to stay and had to be there, and he wouldn't let us just make a good pop song. It had to be a good pop song, but at the same time, it had to have all those elements that I mentioned. Right.
Is there something specific, EJ and Mark, that you guys can think of that was like a...
There's lots and lots and lots.
Yes.
We didn't fight though. Because Mark is so nice, as you guys know.
He's so
Thank
nice.
goodness he's nice, because like we would have fought so much. But
Oh,
like,
you're so mean. But that's, I feel like that was so much of it, and just like Danny saying too, yeah.
It was like, for example, Golden. Like, I was so adamant with, like, for me, if I find a good melody, I'm really adamant. Like, I'm like, I don't care what it is, the words better make the melody sound amazing. Don't ruin the melody with words, is how I always see it.
And Golden was like an okay melody, so
Yeah,
it's
it was
like,
just like,
yes, yeah.
I'm kidding, but like, that was one of them, and I was like very adamant about that. And then Mark was also obviously adamant about like storytelling. So for example, we would be like, there was two options. So oftentimes with Mark, I would always have like a bunch of melodic ideas down, because I also like vocal produce and I record a bunch of my melodies down when I think of it. So with Golden, we had like 4 different options, but 3 or 4, but there were 2 strong verse options. One was like more simplified, and one was a little bit wordier. And that's the part where we were like choosing. Technically, we liked, and you also liked the simplified version. It was like da 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 da, was like the original one, and then the one right now is na 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 na. That was the other one. And I remember Mark was like, we tried to figure out words for the first one. There's such little words to put in. Mark was like, I think we should just go with the other one. Because you can say more
for
things.
that second one, yeah.
Yeah, because and coming from like what Chris and Ian and Maggie are doing, which is going, hey, we need Rumi's backstory in the first part of this, we need Zoe's backstory, we need Mira's backstory, and there's only 8 lines to get it all in. And in the way that Chris is like, oh, there's this like doc that has it all mapped out. Obviously, Golden is not 6 pages, so you're trying to always figure out how to translate it, and having to find that balance. Another one I think of in Golden too is the bridge, where it's like, it's kind of crazy. I mean, the structure of Golden is sort of crazy. And you're in this, I feel like it was just from you though, Ian, just being like, hey, to talk about Golden, Rumi's moment can be the bridge, and bridge can be the emotional moment for her, where she is finally singing, because we've been really trying to find what is the place that Rumi can have this I want moment that is a little bit more than just a pop song she's singing, a little bit past that. And the Bridge of Golden.
But I'll say that might be our most contentious thing in the whole film. Like, I'm talking about the school of it. So no, we finally arrived at the bridge should be the I Want song. And Mark and EJ wrote this thing that was like, could have been a whole song. Like, and it was huge, it was epic, it started this big. I think it was what, like 1 minute and 15 seconds. Probably one of my favorite things ever written. And Chris and Maggie were like, we like it, but this was that whole balance of like, and now it feels like we're in the middle of a musical. And like we've sort of lost the pop song element of it, which was the performance. It's like we're just too far away from that. And it was interesting though, because we just kept going back and forth. I think the 3 of us were very much like, no, this is gold. Literally like just stick with it, it's so good, it's epic. And Chris and Maggie were like, not feeling it yet. And I think one day, it was just you and Maggie and I were on, and we were like, okay, how long can it be? Like, I guess what we realized, and it was like, okay, it can be about 40 seconds. You found like a Billie Eilish reference for something that started like really small, rather than this big. And it was just like this crazy thing. And I even think none of us, tell me if I'm wrong, were actually happy with where it all landed at first. We were just sort of like, it was like the most compromising moment for everyone.
But having that restriction, you come back and we're like, this needs to be 40 seconds.
Yeah.
And we reorganized in a couple of like ways to end of the.
You know, in different order. And then I think like 4 weeks later, we're like, oh.
Well, yeah.
This actually feels on purpose. But it was just so hard at that moment. It's just like we were, we were so used to this one thing. We have to chop it in half. Chris, I feel like you were like, I really want this thing. And maybe it still goes too far. It was just a really interesting. It was a good genesis, and it was contentious, and it ended really, really
It
well.
really like pushed me too as a songwriter too, because like
Yeah.
you would give us like it has to be this long, and then but it has to have these words in it,
And you have to get to a really high
and then it
note.
has to get to
Right.
get back to the chorus, and like it has to be epic there because the last chorus, and so it challenged me like, okay, how should I sing it in a way where this doesn't seem abrupt? You know? Yeah, so I was like, so that's where I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go, I believe, and make it work. So like, okay, so it was just like lots of like challenges and like trying to make it work and all of that.
It's problem solving. What's so fun is that like, this is problem solving the way so much of filmmaking, but songwriting is problem solving. It's like, okay, you have to do this thing. And if we put that full bridge in Golden, I would not do it.
Jimmy Fallon's performance would be really hard times.
Chris, what is you're about to say something good. I'm not hearing what you're going to say.
No, I'm just gonna say, I think you can see, and just to sort of celebrate sort of the final part of the process, you can see just in the stage, the weird creation, and then the exploration, and then the condensing, the crazy condensing of it, until you get a lyric, that, like, a lyric in Golden, which is like, I love that we had written 2 paragraphs about Mira as like, she's like Dennis Rodman. Like she's this ferocious, impulsive, hot-tempered person who's, in the world she lives in, that's a total liability. But when she found K-pop, when she found music and dance, it's like, I found a place. And all these things that were liabilities become assets. We give that to these poor guys. And then they come back with, what's her lyric? It's at the very end. I got 2 miles, but now that's how I'm getting paid. Which again, to what Danny said, is like, now that's how I'm getting paid is such a like pop lyric. It's not like a particularly earnest lyric. And then it has to go to somebody like Ray or Audrey who have to like deliver that in a way that you believe is like actually coming from a badass pop star. So that whole thing, it's just like the soup that you cook down and down and down and down until it's super concentrated.
That's why I wanted to talk to you guys about the performances of how do you view your performances as Huntress? Like, what are you thinking about in terms of bringing character to song, and how does that affect your vocal performances for both of these characters?
Honestly, this project, the description you gave me about, black and white world, rainbow spectrum, that's the pitch you gave me too. And it was like a Tuesday morning or something, I wasn't thinking anything of it. Someone was like, do you want to get on a call about this potential project? I was like, sure. And when he said that to me, I just felt like, damn, that's my life story too, like that's not just a fantasy, that's very much a reality that's dressed in this fantasy. So I think when it came to the performance aspect of these songs, there was this very theatrical and this commitment to the drama that I loved, because I'm also a theater kid. And I think when you start writing your own music, there's definitely sometimes this battle with ego, where you're involved in the writing, you're involved in the production choices, the mix choices, everything. So to kind of go back into this theater-like mindset of just, you have one job, and your job is to deliver the lines and to be a vessel for this character that you didn't write as well. I think that was such an inspiring process to kind of reacclimate myself with, of just having to be so present, and also this relentless commitment to story you know, I think coming from the pop, alt pop world, there's so much nonchalance, and there's so much like, we're super cool, and you know, everything's so aesthetic. I think being a part of this project and being a recording artist again, that was like really my only job, you know. I think that was so inspiring in ways I never expected. So yeah, I think it was truly such a cool fusion of understanding the swag, understanding the, you know, obviously EJ knows that world so much, and then on top of that with Mark and Ian and just everyone involved, and Danny obviously, like I think the fusion of everything and being able to be a part of that fusion was why this project resonates with so many people. It's because it's truly both. And just like the film shows that you don't have to choose one, I think the music does the exact same thing. It reflects that like it can be both, you know? So yeah, it was such an honor to be part of it.
Great.
I think it was truly so beautiful that I found so many similarities in my character with Zoe. So while it was very comforting and familiar, it also forced me to do the scaries, which is confront why I hit all the colors and why I chose to play both sides, because it just felt so real. So honestly, recording sometimes was very difficult because it was so close to home. And there was a point, I don't know why it was how it's done that really upset me, but I was just so frustrated because I was trying to really deliver, like Audrey said, we are finally free from having to touch the writing and the production. We're simply being hired for our voices, but we have to, through our voices, elevate the storyline to add to this character. And so I think there was a point, I think also in Golden, Ian was like, Ray, you can bell. I was like, what are you talking about? I can't bell. And he was like, the moment you talked, I knew you could bell. I was like, yeah, shut up, what are you talking about? And he got me to bell. And I don't think I would have ever really reached that point in like my own artistry or even challenged myself towards that point if it wasn't for such great direction and leadership. I think as an artist, sometimes we do doubt ourselves. I mean, I think actually we doubt ourselves often, constantly, every single day, multiple times a day. And then we woke up today doubtful, and then we were like, oh, 3 Golden Globe nominations, that's crazy. And so I think, again, like, it wasn't easy. I don't think personally for me it wasn't easy, but damn, it was fun.
Hey.
And I learned so much about myself, not just as an artist, but as a human being. And the skills that I've learned in the studio with Ian, the words provided by Mark and EJ and Danny, these are skills and lessons that I'm gonna apply in my artistry for the rest of my life. And I'm so blessed to have that. Because, you know, who can, not many can say they've worked under the guidance of these incredible artists and writers and hit makers, you know? And so I'm just blessed, and it was super fun. I learned so much, and just very honored to be able to be a part of something so great.
So guys, I could sit here for hours longer on this conversation. I'm getting the look in the corner. It's like, I just want to congratulate you all. This film is amazing. For people who make musicals, this is such a hard thing to do. I can't tell you. We've made some that we like. We've made many that we don't even like. It's so hard on these things. And you guys have created a thing I genuinely feel that is going to push the art form forward. It's going to make more people make musicals, and it is so.
And it makes so many people who think they don't like musicals like musicals.
It's going to be game changing. You know, there's a whole generation of people. Like my first movie that I ever saw in a movie theater was The Little Mermaid, and because Ariel sang, I was like, oh, maybe people could express themselves through songs, and that could matter. And like now,
People see hundreds singing, and they're gonna be like, oh, people sing in new movies. That's
and so you're going to raise a whole new generation. So I just want to thank you guys for
story about that it's just fun, it's interesting to know. But he said when they did that, the representation of Ariel as she was in that film, they showed it to some of the OG Disney guys, Frank and Ollie, Tom, so like sort of the originators. Like, they did interview, they did everything, and Frank and Ollie were like, "That's cool, but like, she's very like unappealing sometimes. Like she's too her face, and it, basically to them this depiction of femininity was too bold." And John was like, "No, sorry man, we're gonna do this." And that's what I grew up on. So the first female protagonist I ever was introduced to was already out of the like Disney 30s, like I'm Snow White. Like it was onto a more interesting version of a human. And I think part of Maggie's original vision for these women and the characters that these guys have portrayed is this, yet again, a little more of an interesting and full picture of a female character that's just chugging Kpop and like, doing all kinds of crazy shit that wasn't allowed up till that. So it was kind of an eye-opening thing to see those guys as like, oh, they were kind of breaking some ground there, which I totally took for granted. And hopefully a bunch of
and you
girls
guys,
now they won't think that.
but you are now, and really just thank you guys for making this. Thank you guys for converting a whole. We got to
The amount that we talked about Rewrite the Stars, both we it truly is. In terms of people who are able to write songs that stand in the pop world, and then when you see them in context, every word means something in those stories. The fact that we get this Q&A.
Well, we love you guys.